All right, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to run profit first for your business inside of YNAB. Now, I know I've done a video like this before, but I've changed a ton of the way that I handle things since then. And also, I don't use a bajillion different accounts anymore like the Profit First book tells you. Instead, I let YNAB handle all of that for me. So if you're a small business owner looking to run profit first, but don't want to use all those accounts and instead want to use something like YNAB, be sure to stay tuned for the rest of this video. All right, so before I jump into the profit first and YNAB setup, a couple of quick notes. First, I want you to have a basic understanding of the Profit First system, how it works, and what's involved. You should have either read the book or watched my overview video on Profit First so that you know some of the terms. Next, you'll want to have a solid foundation in YNAB. Now, I've got a ton of YNAB videos. If you have any issues or questions at all, I would start there if I say anything in this video that you're unsure about. Next, recognize that I'm not going to use all the different accounts that the Profit First book calls for, like I mentioned a few minutes ago. Instead, I'm going to use YNAB to represent and differentiate the way the money flows in your business. You'll also want to know that this is based on cash-based accounting method. So if you are in a business that needs to do accrual-based accounting, YNAB won't be able to be your only system. You'll also need to run like QuickBooks or something else in addition to this. Whereas if you are okay doing cash-based accounting like my business, you can run everything through YNAB and you don't need to use QuickBooks or something like that. And then lastly, just know that this specific video is going to be tailored to a small business owner who is, a couple $1 million in revenue or less. Anytime you start scaling beyond that, you're probably going to need to add some more advanced functionality than what I'm going to show in this specific video. That being said, let me show you our checklist. So this checklist right here, this is what we're going to run with for the rest of this video. And by the way, I'm going to share a link with you at the end of this video for you to download all of these slides and all the resources that I'm going to share with you. But this is the checklist we're going to keep coming back to as I walk you through setting up the YNAB and Profit First system together. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is create a brand new budget if you don't already have your business inside of YNAB. So we'll click in the top left-hand corner, New Budget. I'm going to call this one Mapped Out Money YouTube Budget for Profit First, and Create. And then this is going to give us a blank template based on YNAB's setup, and that we can add all our accounts in. Now, because YNAB sets everything up based on personal, you're going to use almost none of this. So out of the gate, I just go through and delete everything. And then you can add in your stuff based on what I'm going to show you here in a second. Now, the second step is going to be to add in your different accounts. Now, like I said, I don't use a bajillion different accounts like the Profit First system calls for. Instead, I try to keep it really simple. So I have one main checking account for the business, one main business savings account, and one business credit card that I put all expenses on. This keeps it really simple and easy to manage. So in YNAB, you're going to click Add New Account, linked or unlinked, and you would add in each of these accounts. Let me go ahead and do that now. So once you've got your checking, savings, and credit card accounts in here, we can move on to the fourth step, which is to set up any debts or lines of credit. So if you've taken out any debt for the business, or maybe even you invested your own personal money and you want to track how much you still owe, we're going to set that up now. The way we'll do that is by adding an account, and this time, instead of selecting credit card or even selecting line of credit, you only want to select line of credit if you're actively using this line of credit or think you may use it in the future. If it's just debt that you've taken out that you are only focused on paying down over time, you'll want to choose liability. So in this case, I'll say business debt, and let's say that we currently owe $10,000. That'll set it up down here. Now, at this point, we are done with our main account setup. Hopefully, you're trying to keep things really simple as well. One checking, one savings, one credit card, and then we're tracking our debts or our lines of credit. Now we're ready to move on to our main category groups. This is where we're going to start implementing some of our Profit First system. Now, I've already done this, so I'm going to hop over now to this other template, and we're going to work from here. So you can see that I've got a business checking, business savings, a Chase business credit card, and then I've also added our PayPal and our Stripe accounts. You don't have to add these. These are our payment processing accounts for our business. So I like to actually add these in here so that I can track my fees as well. but you don't have to do that. If you want to keep it simple, you can absolutely just have the business checking. Now, I do recommend that if you are going to have these sort of payment accounts like this, that you sweep those accounts into your main business checking nightly. So I have the setting turned on both on PayPal and Stripe to be able to sweep any money that's in that account over to my checking every time there's a balance. So I don't ever really hold a balance in these accounts for more than 24 hours before it gets swept over to my checking. And I highly recommend you do the same. That being said, let's jump over to number 6, which is to create our main operating expenses or OPEX category groups and categories. So over here, I'm going to skip this for now. You can see that basically here's what I've done. I've got a merchant cost of goods or fees group right out of the gate. I like to keep this up top. And this is where if you've got like a physical products business and you've got a lot of cost of goods associated with selling your products, you'll want to have a line item for that. If you are tracking credit card fees or processing fees, you'll want to add a line for that. We're going to take this money out before we run our profit first routine. I'm going to get to that here in a second. Now, next, I'm going to have my business savings group. This is one group that is going to hold our profit and our taxes. And so as part of the profit first system, you know that we are consistently setting aside profit and taxes as money comes in. And we need a place to put that. So I've got a category for both of these here. I've also got a future investments category that sometimes I use and sometimes I don't if I've got excess money in the business. Next, I've got my owner's compensation group. Now, this is important. I keep it as a separate group from payroll. Even if I'm running payroll for me and my other team members all at the same time, I still keep the owner's comp separate so that we can track it according to our profit first percentages. So here we've got a group for owner's comp. I have one category to pay myself my salary, and then I have another category for my quarterly bonus that's actually going to come out of the profit area. And again, we'll get to that here in a minute. Next, we've got our credit card payments. This is just a typical credit card payment category. If you use YNAB, you know what this is for. And then next, the rest of these groups are all operating expenses. And you'll see that I've used these little emojis to sort of differentiate and help me quickly see what's going on. So I've got this money bag icon to represent the biz savings. Again, that's profit and taxes. I've got this little smiley face with the dollar money tongue coming out for owner's compensation, the credit card payments, and then this little gear icon, which represents all of my OPEX. Now, the way I've done OPEX is I have a debt payment group. This is for tracking any debt that I'm trying to pay down. Maybe it's other credit cards I'm not actively using. It could be a line of credit from a bank, or it could be even paying myself back for my initial investment into the company. I track that separate from owner's compensation for actually doing the work because I may have borrowed money from myself to start the company. Next, we have payroll. So this is where you're going to have an employee or contractor set up here. Now, one note here, I like to track this based on each individual person so that you can see how much different team members are costing you, and it helps you better get an understanding of where your business money is going and how your expenses are breaking down, and it'll help you make good decisions as to whether or not you can hire new team members in the future and sort of how you're using your money for your different employees. Now, again, you can get fancy here and start adding in different categories to track payroll taxes and all the taxes associated with your contractors or employees if you're paying them that way. I try to keep it really simple, especially when starting out, and I just run all of that through one line item for their specific name. So any money that's going out associated with employee number one, whether it's FICA or Social Security taxes or their actual payments, I'm going to run it all through this category. Next, I've got my tools. So for my business, I've got a bunch of different software tools. I have them all with their due date in the name and all in order by due date. Next, we've got our services. And so this is where if you're sort of using any service-based companies, I like to break that up separately. Some examples will be accounting or legal or Storyblocks as one example. Next, I've got travel, which, we're not doing a ton of in 2020, but I normally like to put it here. And it's important for me to track eating out solo. So this is me eating while I'm on the road traveling for business versus eating out with clients or networking. I want to make sure I differentiate those, and that's helpful at tax time. I've also got conference tickets and then the associated costs with travel themselves, like airlines and cars and hotels, etc. Next, I've got sort of just a catch-all for other. This is going to be for me and Hannah, computer upgrades, giving gifts to clients or customers, also just general equipment like upgrading my microphones, and then a few other things that you can see here. And then lastly, I have one category called Business Unexpected. This is for any sort of small thing that comes through the business that just doesn't really fit anywhere else. Your business groups and categories will probably look very different than mine depending on the type of business that you run. So, use this as a template to get you started, but then be sure to add in all the different things that you may have. The main thing to keep in mind is that you want to have your OPEX separate from everything else. And so the way this works, or the way I do it, is I think you should follow my general structure of a business savings group for your profit and taxes, a separate owner's comp, and then having all of this other stuff be operating expenses. And you can break it down in the groups based on the way that you specifically like to see your reports. All right, so at this point, we're ready to move on to number 7, which is to create goals for all of your categories based on your normal business expenses. Now, if you have used YNAB before, or you've watched any of my videos, you know that I'm a big fan of goals. So you need to have goals for everything. The way you create a goal is by clicking on the category, coming over here to the bottom right-hand corner, and click Create Zoom Video Goal. And so in this case, I'm going to click and create maybe it's $15.99 a month that I pay, and then I'm done. Now, I've got videos that go over the different goal types in YNAB, and also one video showing the toolkit breakdown, which is the Google Chrome extension that I'm using to get this goals column right here. You can check out both those videos. They'll be in the description down below. The main point here is that you need to have goals for everything. That's your estimated amount you're going to set aside based on profit and taxes. That's the estimated amounts for all of your operating expenses, paying your employees. That's the goal for paying yourself a set salary. For example, in this scenario, I'm paying myself $5,000 a month. So at this point, we've got all of our different accounts set up. We've got all of our category groups and categories set up, and we've got goals set for everything. Our next step is to set up our profit first groups and categories. This is this brand new group that I use right here at the top. And this substitutes having to break out and use a ton of different actual accounts. By using these groups, I can separate out my money and make sure that I am moving my money around based on my profit first percentages without having to have a bunch of different accounts to do so. Now, the structure that I like to use is to have profit first, then taxes, then owner's comp, and then OPEX. And I put the actual cap and tap inside the name of the category. So in this case, I've got 5% profit as my cap, my current allocation percentage, and my target allocation percentage at 10%. Taxes are at 19 and 20. Owner's comp is 42 and 45, and then OPEX is 34 and 25. These are my caps and my taps. Now, if you're not sure how to, where to start with these, that's where the next step comes into play. You're going to use the profit first table plus sort of your own intuition based on your industry, what you think's reasonable in your industry, what you know that other people are doing in your industry, and in order to set your TAPs or your target allocation percentages. This is the chart that shows up in the book Profit First. And so let's take this for example. If you're a business that's doing $250,000 to $500,000 in revenue, Mike, the author of the book, would recommend that you try to aim for 10% profit, 35% owner's compensation, 15% in taxes, and 40% for operating expenses. Now, again, though, this can vary drastically based on your industry. And if you do have a lot of cost of goods sold, like let's say that you are a Shopify store or you're running a lot of physical products, then you need to do these numbers after taking your cost of goods out. For me and my business, I'm currently in this range, and so I use these as a rough guideline for getting started for my current TAPs. Now, the next question, the more important question, is how do you set your caps, which is your current allocation percentage? Where do you start to get those numbers? Well, the best place to start is looking at the goals that you've set up inside of YNAB. And so we can see, for example, that based on our different goals, we know how much we want to do. So let's say that, for example, we do want to pay the owner's compensation $5,000 a month. Let's say that that's the salary we want to pay ourselves. Well, if we look and see that our total goals are roughly around 12 grand and we want to pay ourselves 5,000, let's do some quick math. $5,000 divided by $12,000 times 100 is 42%. Which, hey, look, is right on par with the cap that I just so happened to choose. So if you're not sure where to set your cap, I would start with how much do you want to pay yourself, divide that by your revenue on average that you expect your business to be making, and then start there with your current allocation percentage for the owner's compensation. For taxes, do your best to pick that number as well based on the chart. For profit, I highly recommend that you start small. So if you are not profitable right now, if business is very tight, I recommend that you start with 1% with profit. And then if you do it that way, if you start with what do I want for owner's comp, 1% per profit, taxes is just the best, 15, 20% based on what you think is going on in your state. The rest of the money, whatever that number left over is, the rest of the money, that can be used to run your operating expenses. Now, I do have a spreadsheet that I haven't shown you yet. It's going to be available for download in the link at the end of this video, and I've got a whole couple of calculations to help you determine your caps and taps. I don't have time to go over it in this video. If this is interesting to you, though, and you really need help with this, leave a comment down below, and I'll see if I can do a video in the future just on calculating your caps and taps. So at this point in the checklist, you've got everything set up, you've got everything ready to go, and you got your caps and your taps chosen. The last thing we're going to do before we start running our Profit First routine is I just want you to triple check your starting balances, right? Just go into your checking accounts and really make sure that these starting balances are correct for the business checking, the business savings, and your credit card. Because if they're not, it's going to give you a lot of headache down the road. Now, assuming that you've done that, we are ready to move on to budgeting our money down, and we're going to do that following our Profit First routines. Now, there's multiple Profit First routines that you're going to follow. All right, there's a daily, then there's what I call the Profit First routine, which is actually moving your money around based on your percentages. That's going to be done weekly or bi-weekly or twice a month, but depending on your own personal preference. And then there's a quarterly routine. I'm going to go over all three of them, but like I said, as a reminder, if you use the link in the description down below or at the end of this video, you can download all of these slides and everything so that you have them for quick and easy reference. With that in mind, let's start with our daily routine. So what needs to happen daily? Basically, all income is just going to go into the income or checking account, and it's going to sit there. And here's the key if you're using YNAB. The key. All goes into to be budgeted. Let me show you what that looks like. If we come over to this checking account, we can see that I've got a couple of different transfers from PayPal and Stripe. And so the money came from PayPal and Stripe, and then it came into the business checking. So where did the money come from on those accounts, though? So if I click over here into PayPal, for example, you can see that I have a payee set up as money coaching. And so if you hire me to do one-on-one coaching with you, I don't put your name right here in the payee section. Instead, I put money coaching in the payee section. I'll show you why here in a second. Then what I do is that all of the revenue goes into to be budgeted. And then because I'm a little fancy and I like to track my fees and processing fees, I will actually do a split transaction and keep track of that. So the way this looks is that if I add a new one, money coaching, instead of going to be budgeted, I'm going to do a split, to be budgeted, and then I'm going to select fees and processing. Let's say what actually hits my account is $218.17, but I charge $225 and 6.83 as the outflow for my credit card processing fees. All right, so I've just done a split transaction in YNAB. The top line is what actually hits my account. The middle line is the revenue that goes to be budgeted, and the bottom line is my cost of goods or my credit card processing fees. And I click Save. Now, if you don't want to track fees, that's really easy. All you have to do is put the name of your product or service, and then it just goes to be budgeted, and then you're just going to choose whatever actually hits your account. So in that example, it would be $218.17. Now, another example would be over here in Stripe. You can see that I also sell a money mastery class. This money mastery class, I do the exact same thing. Instead of putting the individual student's name right here as the payee, I do money mastery class, and then I break it out the same way. Now, I also get paid a few other ways, right? I have affiliate fees for Amazon links. I also get affiliate kickback for YNAB itself. And then I also get YouTube ads that play before these videos. All of those different things all go into to be budgeted. So as far as Profit First is concerned, my to be budgeted is my income account. Now, it all goes to the business checking physically, but YNAB keeps this to be budgeted as my income account as far as Profit First is concerned. Now, the last thing I want to show you with a reason that we do those different payees that way is so that in my reports, they show up like this. See how if I had like every individual student's name as the payee, my income report would look insane. I'd have like a bajillion different students' names here, which is not helpful. Instead, I want to be able to see my reports broken out by the different products or services that I offer. And so that's why I do the payees the way I do them. And then all income goes to be budgeted. So now we're back in to be budgeted. That's what's going to happen on a daily basis. All income goes directly into the business checking account. It just sits there, and the category is to be budgeted. Now, the second thing that happens daily is you're going to make all purchasing decisions based on your YNAB categories, right? You're not going to just look at the account the way that you might in the original Profit First setup, because the account has a lot of different stuff in it, right? It has your owner's comp in there. It has your to be budgeted stuff in there. It has all kinds of stuff in there. And so if you're actually going to run the business this way, you need to decide what things you're going to buy in the business and what bills you're going to pay next based on the available column in your YNAB setup. This is again why I'm saying you should be somewhat familiar with how YNAB works at this point. So you're going to look at your available column to make decisions about what you can pay, what business investments you want to make, and what you're actually going to spend in your business. All right, that's your daily routine. Now, let's talk about our Profit First routine. So for the Profit First routine, the main thing you want to do is start by reconciling all of your accounts. You just want to make sure that all of this is in fact up to date and it's got the latest and greatest information in here before you start moving all of this money around. Then let's see what we do. The first thing you're going to do is really actually step 0 here that I should add, which is you're going to do cost of goods first. Right? Remember that if you're tracking credit card fees or processing fees, or you have expenses related to your physical products, you want to take all of your cost of goods stuff first. So in this scenario, you can see that I'm negative $81.79. I'm going to click that, cover it with to be budgeted. Now, this is the money that I'm actually going to run my Profit First routine against. Okay, now before we can just run our Profit First routine, there's actually one step that you need to do the first time you're setting up your YNAB in your business, which you're never going to have to do again, but you need to do this first. So if you can see here, I already have $5,000 set aside in my business savings account, and that's mixed in with my to be budgeted up here. So what I really want to do is I need to come down here, or actually up here to my business savings group. I need to go ahead and set aside this $5,000 based on what it's actually for. So of the $5,000 in there, let's pretend that $1,000 is set aside for profit and $4,000 is set aside for taxes. Keep in mind that when you're running this group this way, that this total, this $5,000 number right here, this total should match the business savings account. So the business savings of $5,000 should always match the group total of $5,000. That means that the $9,000 here, that it's basically going to get dispersed across all of these other categories. All right, so once you've done that, again, you should only have to do that once, just based on what's already in your business savings right now when you start YNAB. Now we can run our first Profit First routine. That being said, let's go back here. Now, step 0, which really should get added here. Step 0 is to do your cost of goods first. All right. Before we run our Profit First routine against the to be budgeted, we need to take our cost of goods out. And so in this scenario, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to click here and take this money from to be budgeted. You would do the exact same thing if you had some overspending on cost of goods or if you had other credit card or processing fees. So let's click OK. Now I know that the money that's sitting here in to be budgeted is ready for me to run my Profit First routine. This is brand new income that's come into the account since the last time that I've run my routine. Now, as far as physically where this money's at, it's a mixture of the biz checking and the PayPal account. If you added those two numbers up, you would end up with this number here. And so this is the money that has come in from the business. It's the revenue that's come in that I'm going to run my profit first routine against. So let's walk through this. The first thing you're going to do is move money from to be budgeted to your profit first categories based on your caps. This is why we set up this group right here. Now, you can use YNAB to do this, right? You can actually use YNAB to copy this number, and then YNAB can do math for you. So you can paste this number right here, and then choose a little multiplication symbol, and then hit it with a 0.05. Or, if you like, you can also use the spreadsheet that I've set up to our profit first calculator. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Put your to be budgeted number right here. So I'm going to paste that number in. And then let's check. These green numbers are our inputs. So we've got 5, 19, 42, and 34. All right, so our profit is 5. Our taxes are 19. Our owner's comp is 42. Our OPEX is 34. So the green boxes on the spreadsheet are your input. So all I have to do is make sure that these numbers are right and then paste my to be budgeted here. And then the yellow numbers are my outputs. So now I can just copy paste these over. So I'm going to copy that number, paste, copy that number, paste, copy that number, paste, and copy that number, paste. And now I'm done. Okay, this to be budgeted has been broken up based on our percentages. So we've set aside our money into our different buckets for profit first based on our percentages. This is how we don't have to use all those physical accounts. We can use these categories to hold these dollars for us. Let's go see what our next step is. So our next step is we're going to move money from our profit first categories to the other YNAB categories based on our goals. So I want you to think about these categories as almost like their own miniature to be budgeted. They're pass-through categories. You are never, ever going to categorize an expense to one of these categories. So if you go buy something on your credit card and it comes in, right, you bought something for the business for $100 and it needs a category, you are never going to categorize it to OPEX. You're never going to categorize it to owner's comp. These categories right here are pass-throughs. They're their own miniature to be budgeted. So what this second step is we're basically just going to move the money from here down to where it really should go. So from here, I'm going to click this and move it to my actual profit first savings here. Biz savings, profit savings, that's this category here. Done. Taxes, I'm going to do the same thing. Taxes to 2020 taxes. Done. Owner's comp, I'm going to move that down to my owner's comp here. NIC true payment, this is for paying me my salary. And for this one, I'm going to distribute it out to my categories based on my goals. Now, let me show you a little trick here. To speed this up is to put this money back into be budgeted. Again, this is sort of a more advanced YNAB thing, right? So yes, I could type 150 right here and then move this down to the bank line of credit like that, right? But that's going to take forever. If I click this and type in the individual amount and then move it down here, that's going to take all day. So since you're doing all of this at once, and I know that I've already budgeted my income out based on my profit first percentages, I'm going to put this all back into be budgeted. Now, when I do that, again, we know that this money is actually operating expenses because we're doing it all at one time. And so this allows me to use YNAB's underfunded buttons to speed this whole process up. So what I'm going to do is come down here. I'm going to select the entire payroll group, and then I'm going to select the entire tools group, and then watch. When I click underfunded, boom. Now I've just fully funded all this stuff based on my goals. Then I can come down here and select my services group, 170, come down here, fully fund this one, and then maybe this 4593, I'll throw it here, and I'm done. I have now budgeted down to 0, and I know that I did it based on my profit first percentages. Even though that all the money is still physically sitting in my checking, all of it's mixed in $9,000 together, I know that it's calculated out based on my percentages because I use these categories as pass-through. Now, some of you may be wondering, okay, well, what do I do if I have more money like that than I need in order to meet my goals? This is a great question. So let me add some more money to our biz revenue and then show you what that looks like. All right, so I've come over here to the biz checking. I added a few more transactions to give us some more money to play around with. So let's say that maybe a couple of weeks have gone by. We're running our profit first routine again. This time we've got $5,000. So what are we going to do? Copy this, come over to our spreadsheet, paste it in. Now we have these numbers to put over into our different areas. This is the exact same thing that we did. Let's go here, here, and here. All right, that's down to 0. Next, what do? Move this money to where it should actually be going, which is our profit savings. Move this taxes to where it should actually be going. Okay, now here's the kicker. Here's our owner's comp. I'm going to put 0 here. Now watch very closely. See how I have $2,100 here? We know that that's owner's compensation. But to pay my salary, I only need another $792. So I'm going to fund that. And now my salary is $5,000. Even though I pay myself 42% of our revenue for owner's comp, I don't just pay myself 42% every single month. I put myself on a set salary. This is how we are able to stabilize during the ups and downs of the business. And so if I have more money available for any given bucket than I need that month based on my goals, I can start funding the next month. So what I'm going to do in this case is go forward into October and set aside $1,307.49 for Nick's salary. This is how we start getting ahead, so that during the really good months, we really fund ahead, and during the down months, we can still afford to pay ourselves our salary. So let me go back and show you the exact same thing with OPEX. So for here, again, I'm going to zero this out. I know that this money is operating expenses because I just ran my routine. I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to fund what's left over by clicking underfunded. And now I still have $1130.93 left. And everything is green. I've met all of my goals. And again, we know that this is operating expenses because we ran our routine. So now I'm going to go forward into October. And I'm going to use this money for operating. So I'm going to come down here. And I just like to do top to bottom. So debt payments first. And then honestly, because of this employee number 1, their salary of $1,800, I'm just going to go ahead and put the rest of this right there. $880.93. Done. So now I'm down to 0. I've run all of my revenue through the business based on my profit first routine. And if I had extra, I just started going forward into the next month and fully funding. Now, if you do this long enough over time, you should be able to start getting multiple months ahead. These days, for mapped out money in my business, I tried to stay at least 3 months ahead so that we can weather the ups and downs in case we have a really bad month or a really great month. And that way I keep everything nice and stable in my personal life, being able to always pay myself my set amount. Okay, now that is only half of the profit first routine. Let's come back over here. The third step in the profit first routine is to make a transfer from checking to savings or vice versa to true up your actual savings. So remember how a few minutes ago I showed you that this profit or this biz savings group, the total, should match this total here? Well, what that means is because this bank account is physically holding our profit and our taxes, if we want to keep that true, we need to make a transfer. Now, you don't have to, by the way. You could keep it really simple and actually get rid of the savings entirely and just run one account. You could absolutely do that. But some people like to keep their profit and their taxes still in a separate account. So if that's you, I do a transfer from checking to savings to basically true these up. So of course you could do the math yourself, right? You could type 860428 minus 5,000, and then you could make a transfer of this much. You could also use this spreadsheet here and just do the numbers there, right? So what I can do is 860428. That's the savings balance, or the actual, real savings is 5,000. The YNAB total of the group says 860428. And then this calculator basically tells you, are you making this transfer from checking to savings or savings to checking? and then it tells you the amount to transfer. So now what I would do is in real life, I would go to my real life bank and I would make one transfer. So in the normal Profit First book, you're making a bajillion transfers. In this scenario, you don't have to do that. You can do one transfer of this number here. So in real life, I would go do that. Now in YNAB, of course, it'll show up like this. To from, biz savings, no category needed, an outflow from the checking to the savings. Done. And now this business savings matches this business savings group. That's the third step in our Profit First routine. The last step is to just pay your bills. So this is where I'm actually going to go run payroll to pay myself. I'm going to go run payroll for my employees. I'm going to pay any bills that are due, and I'm going to pay any credit cards that are due based on YNAB. This is where we're actually just making sure everything's paid up, and we're using the money in our categories to do this. This is the fourth step. All right, and this is the main piece of your Profit First routine. Now, let's talk about our quarterly routine. Our quarterly routine is very simple. For the quarterly routine, you're going to complete a Profit First routine first. That's the 4 steps we just went over. Then you're going to take 50% of the profit account and pay yourself a profit distribution. This is all based on the book, of course. And so we're not going to reinvest this money back into the business. What we're going to do is we're going to pay ourselves a bonus for actually being good business owners and running this business well. So in YNAB, what do? Is come up here to our profit savings category, and I'm just going to do the math and divide that, right? So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to say, okay, 1750.89. So I'll pull up my calculator, 1750.89. Divide that by 2. Okay, so $875, and let's call it 45 cents. I'm going to move this money, 875.45, to my distribution, my owner's distribution. That's right down here. Boom. So now I have less money in the profit savings, and I have money in owner's distribution, and I'm going to go pay myself a distribution from my business checking. Right, I'm going to go run payroll again and pay myself an extra distribution for my profit bonus. Now, you may need to transfer money from savings to checking physically in real life in order to make that payment, right? You'll just have to see based on your balances. The third step for the quarterly routine is to pay your taxes. This is where you're going to send in your quarterly payments or your quarterly estimates based on your owner's comp. You should have all that money sitting right here in your 2020 taxes category. For me, typically, I just drain whatever amount that is. Whatever amount is right here that's sitting in the account, I just send that money into the IRS. And I know if I've chosen my percentage right, then I'm always going to be pretty much on par with what I need to do. Then lastly, there's a good opportunity to review your percentages and basically see, can we make any changes? How is the business going? My cap for profit is 5% right now, but my target is 10. If the business is going well and revenue seems to be going up and I've cut a few expenses and things are on the, up and up, maybe I'm going to take that from 5% to 6%. So I'm going to increase that by 1. And then I'm going to maybe try and decrease my operating by 1. Now, I don't always do this. There are some times where I really can't afford to do that, but sometimes I can. And so once a quarter is a really good time to actually sit down and review your caps and taps and see if you can make an incremental change towards where you would like to be. All right, so that's our daily Profit First and our quarterly routines. You can see all those summarized here. And like I said, you can go to mappedoutmoney.com/YNABPF for Profit First to download all of this. I've also included links in the slides to the book, to a Profit First overview from Mike Mikowitz. I've also got my calculations and my other calculation for determining your caps and taps all there at that link. So go there and check that out. As always, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.